Although I don't know where to start except, where, let's see, where's it been? So last week was, I don't even know because I can't even remember last week.
Paper. I didn't write one word.
Well, I can't even remember since I can't remember even what happened last week. It's just so weird. All right. So last week was, I wrote nothing.
I wrote nothing either.
Well, we can look back on our post. Hold on, I'll look at that really quick.
Or does it matter?
It doesn't, obviously, but at least what gives us some kind of reference point to start from. All right, last week was about Are you ready to, I'm totally blanking. Are you ready to hold a pure space while the rest crumbles?
Okay.
What if we said that a catastrophic crumbling is inevitable and already happening? Would you be able to accept that, or does it scare you even the least tiny bit? So it was actually, I think, in like leveling up in the trust and guidance.
Yeah.
And being beyond the fear. Like it's starting to come back. It was something about being beyond any level of fear and trusting guidance, unconditionally. I don't know. What's going on? Is that you? I think I started playing it. I did. Like, where's that video? Where's that voice coming from? It sounds like me. So,
Well, it can't be me because I don't have internet right now.
That's right. Yo. So, it is trust and guidance beyond all things. I mean, we'll look at the volcanic eruption that's happened in my household because, my daughter, and wanting to avoid being lonely and going away for her junior year of college, wants to get a dog. And then there was it just caused this huge eruption.
Well, and I guess I had my own eruption, but it was physical.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, because with the thing with my eye.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is,
Hey,
now that I think back on it, it's like I did all kinds of work on my eye, and then I ended up having an appointment anyway at the doctor's, and it's like all the symptoms I describe are textbook, but yet when she looks, there's no evidence in my eye. So it's like, okay.
That's weird.
So I can have supposedly this thing happening, but there's no evidence, physical evidence. So, I'm just going with guidance that, it's done. And the symptoms have lessened and lessened. And this morning they're hardly even here. So it's,
I was just going to say, what came to me was, well, maybe he just took care of it before they were even able to detect it. So
that's just the way I'm looking at it, is that, I needed to look at that and trust that even though that what my eyes are telling me isn't what reality is. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a nice catalyst for the weekend to get some things brought up, trust issues and priorities and things like that to,
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to, for me, it goes back to trusting guidance, even when it really pisses other people off.
Right.
And standing in your truth and not sacrificing.
Right.
What's highest and best for you.
Right. Right. Which I spent a lot of time this weekend staying in that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really, and it's interesting because I look back and I think, well, that little explosion, and I'm not even going to go into all the details because on here, but it was just like, it was just this ridiculous level of effort to try to persuade me. And it was like, no,
Right.
no, not right now. And it wasn't like no forever. It was like, no, not right now. It's just.
Well, and what's interesting is you use the word distract. I mean, that's totally what the symptoms with my eye were.
Yeah.
It was like things coming into my field of vision. It was like, how distracting is that?
Yeah.
So yeah, distraction.
Right, because that's what these eruptions are. Really, they are just distractions, and it's almost like we've leveled up again on. Can you just stay the course, even with all these things going all around you?
Right. All right.
And stay in place of love, which I had a challenging time with yesterday. Actually, I stayed true to my guidance.
Well, and it's really.
I got dragged into it.
I don't want to judge it and say it's hard because that's a choice, but it's like it becomes, the focus doesn't become the problem and the worry and the whatever. It's how to not go there, how to just stay in that place.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge, is more how do I stay the course and stay in that place of unconditional love without getting triggered by anything.
Yeah, and that's and it is a challenge because so what the universe is obviously, or the multiverse is bringing to us, are the things that are the easiest things to trigger us, right? Or the deepest things we still hold, right? Because with me, it's getting my kids off into their life, as young adults, in a place that's going to be good for them and supportive of them, even if they don't agree with that.
Right. Well, I had my own version of that going on.
And it was, and you know what? Even on Friday, we had a little bit of that too, but with my other daughter, because, she's home from college now and she'd taken been done with college and she was taking a break and she's been starting to look at jobs, and we had a bunch of discussions around that like a week ago on saying, just put a lot of stuff out there and see what sticks.
Right.
Instead of like, applying for one and then waiting to see if you hear until you apply for another one. And I'm like, you will never get to that place. Right. Whether it's an internship or a job or whatever, because she's sort of looking for a combination of both. And she was offered this one position that like literally was paying minimum wage. And I said, you have a college degree.
Right.
I said, right out of high school, you didn't make minimum wage. You'd be cutting your pay over your part-time job in college by 40% that you were making. I was like, that's not the direction to go. I said, I understand it's someplace where you'd want to have some experience. I'm like, but the thing was, it's with the public libraries here, right? So it was like, this one was like minimum wage, but she's also at the same time, she applied for another position within the public libraries that would be like $15 to $20 per hour part-time. Right. And I said, well, that would be the job. And they said that doesn't close, I think, for a couple of weeks. So she wouldn't here for a while. And I'm like, so that would be more suiting for you. And I'm like, because you're worth it.
Right. Right.
And I said, even if it's only $10, I said, okay, so it's 10 hours a week. It's twice as much money.
Right.
At least. Right. And I said, and then, it gives you more space with the internship and getting ready for grad school and all, whatever. And so it was funny that we got into a big debate about that, right? Because the panic is, I want to take the first thing that was offered to me. And I said, except if you apply for that other job in the same system, would that nullify you from being able to be, get that position?
Right.
And then you're selling yourself short. I said, and you can do this. And then she felt bad, didn't want to say, I'm like, it's not being mean by like declining the job, because she asked them if she could have the weekend to think it over, because she had other things, and they said yes. And she said yesterday, I said to her, well, Friday we were talking, I said, you can go back to them and say thank you, and yes, I'm really interested, but this is my situation. I really,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. I'm like, and you can be honest with them. They'll understand if they're professionals. I mean, you have a college degree and free, like, I was surprised they even offered her a job at minimum wage. That was a minimum wage job.
Right. Right.
So, yeah. So, but getting into that, like, there was a lot of arguing and a lot of like, well, then of course there's because I wasn't agreeing at first, it was like the, like, arrows trying to be shot to me about like being controlling. And I'm like, I'm not being controlling. I'm just telling you to start on the foot of being confident in your worth.
Right.
Because if you don't start there, you're going to be doing a whole lot of catching up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I said, why would you slide backwards by 40% after you finished college? It just doesn't make any sense. And I said, I can understand even if it was only like a couple of hours less an hour, but I said, and again, and this is what I always tell my kids, it is your choice. You're over 18. It is your choice.
Right. Right.
This is just my 5 cents for you to consider. I don't control this. Although it was funny because when we got into this debate at the end of the week, it was like my other daughter was like, well, you tell us to have our own lives and then you try to control. I'm like, I'm not trying to control anything. I'm giving you an educated background of guidance on what to consider.
Right. Right.
I said to Brianna, my oldest, the one who was offered the job, I said, you said that one of the things they were really looking for was somebody who was going to stick and stay for a while. And really, does that look good if you just come and then, wait, just take it until the next thing is, till something else is offered to you? And right. Also, I mean, I think they would respect it more if you were like, okay, well, this is really where I am. But anyway, and this was all this, and it's a really challenging thing. And I find it like there were times I had to walk away this weekend with the dog thing or whatever, and because I could feel myself getting triggered. Where do you get triggered, right? Where the people who are closest to you.
Right.
And so, like, I had to walk away and go, so why am I so triggered? And, and it goes back to not even my kid. Of course, it has nothing to do with my kids, right? It comes back to me of like, well, why do I feel like I need to be right? Right? Do I feel like I need to be right? Do I feel like I'm judging them for not seeing the bigger picture as I can see it?
Right.
And implying that that's a better one? I don't know. Probably is part of it, right? Because as a parent, we tend to do that automatically.
And I know for me, I just felt that I wasn't even being heard.
Well, and that too, that was the other thing is, am I creating something here that is devaluing my truth in some way?
Right. And I know I found myself several times over the weekend when I would speak my truth and somebody would say, but that's not, and it was like, what you're reflecting is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. Because the only thing I'm discussing here is me and my thoughts, my feelings, what I'm projecting out.
Right.
And that's all I wanted acknowledgement of was my perspective.
Exactly. That's it right there.
Right.
Right.
And it was like, I understand you have your perspective, but I no longer base my perspective on yours.
Right.
I can only speak about me.
Right. And for us, it's really so important for us to stand in that truth. Right.
Well, and I was surprised at how quickly things diffused or resolved or whatever word you want to put on it by simply having my perspective acknowledged. Doesn't even mean it was agreed upon or yeah, you're right or anything like that. It was just the mere, okay, I now see your perspective. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean I agree with it. Doesn't mean that it's right. No judgment on it.
Right, because I always say I understand I always say to people, I understand you. I always make it a point to understand their perspective.
Right. And I was surprised at how much um, it diffused my emotion over the subject just from somebody saying, okay, I acknowledge that that's your perspective.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get there.
I mean,
sort of got there. I sort of got there with Brianna because last night I asked her, well, because I didn't bring it up again because we all had the other explosion going on. So I said to her, so what did you decide? You know, and she said, oh, I'm gonna turn it down and tell them, like like what we talked about, and just thank them for the opportunity. But, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, good. Does it? I mean, so that was sort of acknowledging.
Right. Right.
And I also understand, having to look at my younger one, Sierra, about the dog thing. And it's a really common thing for kids who are going away for the first time from home, to want something to give them the nurturing that deep down they don't want to admit they're going to miss.
Right. And something to transfer the attachment to.
Right.
Yeah.
And part of the explosion was because I wasn't holding the space that allowed for that transference, and I was like, well, I'm not saying no. And obviously, again, it was, I can't tell you no anyway, because you're 20 years old, so it's your choice. But I don't feel like it's a good decision. I'm not happy with it because why it affects, like people can say it doesn't affect you, but as a parent, it does, because when they come home and, and all that kind of stuff. But it was like, there were many, many things, but it was just the guidance. The guidance originally was just a not right now. Right. And that's what I said. I was like, I'm not saying that you can never get a dog. I'm saying just wait until you get down there and in your apartment and settled in and back in school and, back in work since she's transferring her job, and what your hours are going to be. And that's the grown-up dealing with things and facing the sadness, because you're going to have it at some point, no matter what you do to try to transfer that, because eventually it hits you and you'll have it reflected back to you in different ways until you finally acknowledge it. And so, I had just, as I said offline, I had just said finally last night, can we just agree to disagree and choose not to be angry at each other this week, because we have a lot to do.
Right. Right.
And I still haven't been acknowledged. And it's okay. But the thing is, if I need acknowledgement from somebody, that's me still externalizing, right? So that still makes me, then there's some place inside of me that still feels like that I need it in some way, shape.
Right.
Because I don't believe it in myself, I guess, or something like that. Even if it's a crumb. And these crumbs that come up, they turn into big volcanic explosions right now. So.
But I also find that as they resolve the quantum leap that happens afterwards,
yeah,
even though it is that small crumb, it really, the release of it or resolution or change throws you that quantum leap away from that.
Yeah, and I feel like, in a way, it's funny because you and I both have our kids at the same place, right? Our babies are going, like the last child kind of thing. And even though I have Brianna home, it's only for a short period of time, even if it's a year, right? And she's an adult now, so it's a different dynamic entirely anyway, right? More like having a housemate than anything else, So yes, it's hard. Absolutely, it's hard. Not hard. That's a judgment, like you said. It's challenging because it is really detaching these roles, anything from the roles that we have left, to say, "Fly, little birdie, it's time." Right. I can see that it would probably be even more challenging to the ego because of the roles we have ingrained if the kids were younger right now. Because we put so much into, like, if they still had to be tended to and really supported in, you know, say like even a preteen or teen or, you know, kid kind of way.
Right.
So kudos to those who are doing that, because, you know, and having to, in this like energy of supporting, really standing in our truth and being who we are without the roles attached, that's a really challenging thing culturally. It's a really challenging thing to our egos, right? Because that's how we attach our identity to like our kids, being a parent, being a spouse, being a, you know, a child. I know a lot of people who are going through the stuff with even their elderly parents who are, you know, living with them now. You already did that.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, and I still find things come up that it's like, oh yeah, I guess I haven't let go of that,
Mm-hmm.
or I haven't. You know, I don't want to say the word overcome, but I see it as integrate the energy in a different way.
Yes. And say, yeah, it's yeah, it's and I see a lot of those in our spiritual group who have kids who are younger, right? Who are having a much harder time being able to say, I am this being, without having to attach the mother, you know, the mother part to it.
Right, right.
I am this being and I can stand in my power. And I know, because I mean, going through all of this, I have had, you know, my kids were growing up. So yes, but they were also on the tail end of it. And it's actually just sped up so much in the past couple of years. You know what I'm saying? That it's so much bigger now.
Right.
And it is a challenge when you have, especially for those who have like spouses who aren't quite as aware or in that place of understanding, because then they're like, why are you not following this role? You've got to still fill this role.
Right.
You still got to be this kind of spouse, and you've still got to be this kind of parent. And how, you know, how dare you for being so wildly selfish as somebody's group is starting.
Well, and it's almost, I know for myself, it's been such a year, you know, it's right now, almost right at a year since my dad died. And that was the beginning of having to reinvent myself, because so many of the roles that I had taken on and defined myself by were they just evaporated. And that, you know, as nice as that sounds, it's kind of very, it rocks your world.
Yes. Well, yeah, because it's so embedded in the folds, right?
Right. And, you know, it's just now, and now Becca going off to school just after that year mark. And it's just like, I mean, literally, I'm in this big house and it's me and the animals, you know, pretty much 75% of the time during the week. And it's a lot of reflection time, a lot of, I don't know, things that I'd never given myself the time to think about.
Right.
So it really, you know, it's one of those things where I look at it as painful as it was going through it, it was the best gift I've given myself.
Mm. Right. Because it took away all the distractions one by one, right?
Yeah. It didn't feel like one by one. It felt like a big whoosh.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
sometimes challenging for trust.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Totally. In fact, it was really interesting that I was in the middle of this whole big volcanic energy thing. And of course, and there's, like I was saying, also there's a little bit of the egoic sadness of my youngest going away, even though she's 20 and going into her junior year, it's not even like right into college. And that sort of hit me unexpectedly this weekend. And so I sort of had these random bouts where like tears would just start, going down my eyes, like my eyes would start leaking. And then there was the disagreements going on, but it was funny because we were in the grocery store yesterday. So then, and here's the thing. So there's me going, because there's the part of you that says, well, am I just being stubborn or is this really guidance, right? You start questioning yourself, right? And I'm in the middle of that. And I literally look at this woman who's staring at me. We're standing in line at the grocery store at Trader Joe's, and she's staring at me. And I was like, gosh, she looks familiar, but I see so many people, like, I just can't remember, and she says, Angela, right? And I was like, yeah. And here I am, I'm like, okay, wipe my eyes, and she was somebody who I apparently had done a house clearing for, but I don't remember. I don't remember which one, because I've done so many of them over the years. I just don't know which one, but she goes, you're friends with so-and-so. You came in, did a house clearing for me. And I said, oh yeah. She goes, I ended up really not liking the house. So we just sold it and moved someplace else. And she's like, but that probably helped me, whatever, and she said that probably helped us to sell it anyway or something. I don't remember her individual situation. I don't remember any of it. I was just like, okay. So then of course the ego wants to say, oh, look, see, you failed at that too. Right. And it was like, what do you mean I failed at that?
Yeah,
No. I was like, stop, and we still have those little voices that come in every once in a while. And it was funny because I ran into her at Trader Joe's and then she's like, well, thank you, even though it didn't work out with the house and da da da. And I was like, okay. And then she left. And then like not 15 minutes later, we ran into her at Whole Foods on the road.
Well, and it's funny, the words, it's like, well, sorry, it didn't work out with the house. Actually, it may have worked out with the house, that her whole purpose there was to get you in to do the clearing, and that it, had nothing to do with any preconceived plan.
Mm-hmm.
That was in reality what was supposed to happen.
Right. Except, at that moment it was just hitting me like, it was like that hitting you when you're down kind of thing. And I was just like,
right.
Oh, stop. But then here was the voice that came and was like, stop judging yourself.
Right.
It's all perfect and you know it. That's the trust, right? Even in those moments when the ego is trying to take over and you start getting that wave or whatever, but then there's the voice that's like, except that it's not true. That the truth is it's perfect. And the more we stay in that guidance and in a place of love and self-love, unconditional self-love and truth, as long as, it's easier to trust and it's easier to flow through anything that the ego wants to chatter in the back of our head about. But yeah, and I see that a lot going on, going back to the roles thing with kids, but I've seen that a lot because there's a lot of that conflict with many who are stepping out into their truth that's beyond the roles of, say, parenthood.
Oh, yeah.
And the spouse is like, well, what are you doing? No, okay, it's okay for you to go and play and do this when it's convenient for us, but otherwise you need to be by me and our child or children.
Right.
Because that's your primary purpose in life. That's a big struggle that's going on for many right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so fortunate and thankful to have a husband who was never like that to begin with, because we both were very equal partners and just always picked up the slack for the other one at any given time during the kids growing up. So that's what I feel like is happening, is it's hitting us in any of the places where it might still hurt, like,
oh yeah. Yeah.
Like, cause it's like, cause different people are getting it in different ways. And it's like, whatever's left for us to look at and say, I can get past this. And this is, not the case, but this is. or I can stand in this truth, and I can stand in this authenticity. And it's one, I want to say test, but it's like a self-test. It's almost like we're pushing ourselves to a different level of clarity.
Yeah.
And I think actually that hitting on that is the next step to, because we were talking about because we're getting to a different place of trust last week, I guess, which I don't even remember at this point, which is funny.
Yeah, I don't either. But
I
see how clarity would be a logical follow-on to that.
Yeah, because when we get past the stuff that's taking up all this energy of, oh, I have to prove myself, or here's the one that runs subconsciously for many, right, is, oh, I got this. I can do all of this, and then I can just humor him or her or them and still play that role for them until the universe is nah, because you're still not being your authentic self.
Right.
And now that's what's happening right now. It seems to be all that stuff is being stripped away, and people are getting pushed into making choices of being authentic and honoring your truth in a place of love over like bending to the will of others because of the need to feel like you're worthy, or, well, to get that love.
And it's almost gotten to where, because of the ego's old role, that we've agreed that these decisions have to be so escalated that it's almost like it's an either or. It's not, well, I can do this and do this. It's like, no, you either do this or you do this. It's not a little bit of this and a little bit of this, because you can't walk in your truth 85% of the time.
No, and that's what a lot of us have been doing, right?
Right, absolutely.
You say, oh, and because that's what we do. We justify it in our minds, in our ego, going, yeah, but 85% of the time, I'm
better than it was last week.
Exactly. What's 15% of just giving away my power to others, or letting them feel like they're appeased and happy because I am bending myself to their will or doing what they want me to do.
Right. But there's value in keeping the peace.
Yes. Oh yeah, I've heard that one a lot too.
Yep.
Keeping the peace. Yep. And I'm like, but what is peace? Peace is within yourself, right?
Right. Yeah, each person has their own definition of peace. So you're giving away your definition of peace in favor of someone else's.
Yeah. And that's probably one of the last things for us to really allow to resolve and complete, so that we can move on. Because, it goes back to, the discussion we had a couple weeks ago about, well, what do you mean by saying when we do the intentions, there's the odd in Trinity on doing whatever's to be done so that we can be at the vibration where this is our truth, right?
Right.
Whatever's to be done. Well, what does that mean? What if that means, getting to the fight with the person who's closest to you? What if that, what if that means, having that near-death experience? What if it means even dying, right?
What if it means that the people that I can now consider my family no longer are my family? Yes.
Yep. And that's the thing. It's funny because sometimes we would rather focus on the death thing, thinking, oh, the death is the scariest thing. But sometimes the scariest thing is feeling like nobody loves me anymore.
Right. Or I'm going to be alone.
Right. Or banished.
Right.
Or an outsider, or, or scoffed or judged, scoffed at or judged or whatever. Right. That's sometimes even worse to people than dying.
Oh, absolutely. It's a living death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what happens if my children judge me and think I'm a bad person?
Right. Right.
And we can get there most of the time. Like most of the time we're like, no, I can do this. But then there's that little 2% that's just like, no, I want them to love me.
And that brings up something else that I came to this realization on this weekend, and it really pissed me off at first. And then I I came to a different place about it. And it's a question that I had been asked of me is, when you were little, whose love did you want the most? And it's like, that question was pretty easy for me because my dad's was always unconditional, always right there. And my mother was so scattered and so overwhelmed and so busy and all this. So looking back on it now, obviously it was my mother's, but I never looked at it from the perspective of how my dad probably thought about that, because majority of my energy was focused on her and trying to win that love. And here he was being there unconditionally, and it was available all the time. So I look at that in a more practical scenario currently, and it's like, I used to wonder why my kids invested so much time in their father, who was never there for them unless it was on his terms. Well, it was that same scenario. Of course, because of the social structure we've set up and the things we came in to do, they were always trying to attain that love from him, even though I was the one in the day-to-day, minute-to-minute there when it mattered. And it's
because they knew it was already there.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's almost like we've created scenarios that make things distasteful or stressful or whatever negative word you want to use on it to drive our change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So whatever we've set up to drive our change to stand in 100% of our truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I did actually, funny, as I posted this morning, a thing about how we choose to experience that as our, it's our choice. Right. Whether, because change is happening, a lot of change is happening, and for everybody, right? So it's really not whether it's bad or good, it's how we allow ourselves to experience it. Are you going to let go?
Right.
And allow yourself to resolve and be resolve and in trust and in that authenticity? Or are you going to still have to reach outside of you and fight because you feel like you have to pull that stuff to you, like love and all that kind of stuff? Bless you. And the more, bless you. And the more we, the more we reach outside of us or continue to reach outside of us, the more angsty and eruptive it becomes.
And perceived hard.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. And that's why I was like, last night, I just finally just went into my meditation room and just sat there and just went out there in the space of love and, holding the space of love, not just for me, but for everybody else, because everybody's sort of antsy and whatever, because we've had a lot of change going on this summer. And it's like, okay. But that's what's important for us, because I hear it over and over again about people not doing their self focus or their meditation or whatever. And I'm just like, this is the time when you get into that kind of disruption, when you start feeling like you're getting bowled over, right? Which is an ego thing. That's the time to make sure you go out there and recenter yourself in that space of authenticity and love. That is the time when we don't want to, because then we have like, I don't want to do, who needs that? And that's bullshit and all that kind of stuff, right? That's the time that we need it the most. And it was funny because finally I just walked away from everything, and I was just like, I'm going in here and I'm shutting the door and I'm going to be in here for a little while.
Yeah.
And it was a reset. And because I went back to that place, and it's important for us to remember. It's important for us to remember that, because that will help us to adjust with the flow, and because the flow is so big right now.
Right. And shifting almost expectation, which we've talked before about. Expectation is nothing but what you're trying to create.
Right.
If we shift our expectation to, what it has to be really uncomfortable or perceived as stressful for me to make that big of a change.
Right.
Let's adjust it and say, I remember that I set this up for myself and that I'm going to take full advantage of grace and ease here.
Yeah. Yep. I'm gonna write that down because that's actually a good way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I probably should too, because I certainly am not going to remember it even this afternoon.
How did you just say that?
Yeah. Adjust our expectation. That we take full advantage of grace and ease. I don't know, to shift our perspectives.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, trust should probably be in there too.
Yeah. Grace, ease, and trust. Grace.
Yeah.
Yeah. To shift our perspective
of remembering.
Yeah. To a place of, more enjoyment.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's our thing, I think.
I think so.
All right. Are you ready?
I am.
That was different. It always is every week.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff that floated through. It was almost like bubbles popping. And then at the end, I saw the elephant came back. I've been seeing that elephant, Ganesha or whatever, that energy for a while. And it was just like, remember, you climbed up on the back. And once you do that, it just plows through everything. And it's good. You can just let it be easy. And I saw that for all of us. It was really interesting because I saw it as microscopic as for me and for stuff within me and around me as well as for all of us. And that's all I remember because there was so many things that I saw just sort of, they were like floating around and the bubbles were all popping. Like they didn't need to be contained in their own role or piece anymore. And it was nice. It was very nice. It was soothing.
I saw, I had the sensation and then kind of zoomed out and saw that it was like I was in a parachute just gliding over everything. And it's like, I've never parachuted, but boy, did it feel amazing. Just such freedom. And it was like, with the cords or whatever, so I could steer. And I mean, it was like effortless. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I need, is that higher perspective and the effortlessness of it. That's
funny that you bring that up because skydiving has come up. Like Scott and I were talking about it last week, and he goes, our next year's our 25th wedding anniversary, because maybe we should go skydiving for our 25th anniversary. I was like, maybe. I've done indoor skydiving. I've not done the outdoor one yet. He has.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny you brought that up because it's not something I typically think about, but a part of me was like, and I'm not sure if that intake is that a little nervous or is it a little excited or, or both?
Yeah. It made everything so much effortless is the best word I can come up with, and easy and done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it felt like a lot of things smoothed out in there. That was nice. All right. Well, onward we go with our tweak of the week. The tweak of the week. All right, everybody. So enjoy that. I'm going to open up my thing. Hold on. And we will see you all next time.